Now, how do we make this happen on our teams? Well, the leader has to go first. The only way for this to happen is if the leader goes first. On the slide over there, we have the role of the leader, because the leader is really critical in this, and they have to model the behavior. Because if the leader cannot be vulnerable, then the rest of the people on the team probably shouldn't be, and certainly won't be. And the way I learned how important this is when I worked with a CEO of a company. Now, this is a famous CEO. You've seen his picture on national magazines, and you've heard of this guy. And he is a brilliant, brilliant man. But at the time I worked with a company where he was the CEO, there were some real shortcomings in his leadership style. I don't know if he's changed those since then. He's now at a different company. And that previous company almost spun out of control, and they sold it off, and it really struggled. Well, one of the reasons why they struggled so much, in fact, the key reason, was because there was no trust on the executive team. Now, by the way, by the time they started to go out of business or started to struggle, what do you think that the Wall Street Journal or Business Week was writing about them? Well, they were writing that they had product problems or strategy issues, or that they had made some mistakes in their decision making. And while that was true, those were mere downstream symptoms of the real problem. The real problem on this team was that there was no trust at the executive level, and it stemmed from the CEO. Again, he was a brilliant but intimidating man. Nobody ever gave him feedback. Finally, the head of human resources, recognizing this, she convinced him that he needed to get feedback, and so he agreed to do a 360-degree feedback program. Now, I think 360 programs can be good. Not always, though. But that's what he wanted to do. So my team, we administered a small survey of his executive team to give feedback. So he received the data back and proceeded to share that data with no one. Finally, the head of HR, God bless her, she went to this guy and said, listen, they took the time to fill out these surveys. You've got to go over the results with them. You just got to tell them what you learned. He said, okay, I'll do it. And then he allowed me, as an outside consultant.
Hey, Pat?
Yes?
You might just explain a 360,
okay.
Quick, what it is.
Thanks, Vern. Vern asked me to explain the 360 for those that might not know. 360-degree feedback is when a leader, or an employee at any level, I guess, surveys his or her peers and superiors, and in this case, actually, it was probably 180-degree feedback because they were all his subordinates, and gets feedback from people all around them. Then a consultant summarizes that data and presents it to them. So the idea of 360 is they're looking around and getting feedback formally from everyone on the team. Okay, so when he finally agreed to go over this 360 feedback, he reluctantly allowed me, as an outside consultant, to observe that staff meeting since I had administered this program. So I sat off to the side on a chair like the one I'm on right now, that had wheels on the bottom, which will make sense in a second. So he stood up in front of his team, picked up his summary, and he said, okay, it says here I'm not a very good listener. Huh, what do you guys think? And they went around that table, and I couldn't write this in a book, I promise. I couldn't make this up, I should say. And they went around the table and said, I think you're a good listener. Yeah, I think you're a fine listener. I don't have a problem with your listening skills. Yeah, you're much better than the last guy. Yeah, you're a good listener. All the way around the table. And everybody said, no, I don't have a problem with your listening. And he said, okay, good, good. And so they moved on to the next one. And the CEO looked at his form and he said, it says here I don't give enough feedback, not enough praise. I thought I'd gotten better at that one. What do you guys think? Once again, they went around the table. No, I think you give a lot of feedback. Yeah, I do too. I don't have a problem with it. Yeah, I think you give lots of praise. I think you've gotten really good at it. I don't have a problem. All the way around the table. And that's where I sat there that day and I said, if I have any integrity as a consultant, if I have any integrity at all, here's where I have to lose a client, or at the very least, put one in jeopardy. So I got in my little chair with wheels on it and I eked up to the table. I rolled up to the table right next to the CEO. And I said, excuse me, but you people are the only ones who filled this out? So somebody in here had to say this. Well, as you can imagine, it was pretty awkward. Until finally, the head of marketing, poor guy, slowly raised his hand and said, well, yeah, I would like to get more, my team would like to get more feedback from you. They only hear about things if they screw up. I think they'd like to know if they were doing a good job. Yeah, I probably wrote that on my survey. I could vouch for that. The rest of the room was quiet. Until the head lawyer said, not me, I think you give plenty of feedback. And everybody else said, yeah, we do too. We really don't see a problem here. And they left that poor marketing guy there just to die. They just cut the legs right out from under him. Now, the moral of that story is twofold. First of all, that's the day the CEO lost all credibility. Because he was not able to stand there in front of that team who had all given him that feedback and say, I appreciate what you told me. I can verify that this is true. I've had this feedback in my career. My wife tells me this about every 2 weeks, because you know he knew about this. All he had to do was say, I appreciate the feedback. I'm going to work on these things. I can't promise I'll ever be great at it, and I'm going to need your help. But more than anything, I just want you to know I'm aware of it. That alone would have gained great credibility, and it would have done something else. It would have sent a message to that team that they also needed to be vulnerable. But when that CEO said, listen, I'm never going to admit my mistakes, he told the rest of that team, whether he realized it or not, and none of you should do it either, because a sign of weakness is a bad thing. So that team watched that company